You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button. While we still sort of bathe in the euphoria of the win over Alabama, there's also the very real now challenges and conversations of what's ahead. And LSU at 7-2 right now has 3 games to go, and 2 of them are road conference games. And as we've talked about kind of ad nauseum, it is hard to win on the road in this league. And Arkansas, which spent some time this season in the top 10, is waiting, and a trip to College Station against the Texas A&M team, which has certainly not met any expectations. They had also spent time this year in the top 10 and having a massively disappointing season. Those 2 teams await. And they're both games where LSU is a better football team than both Arkansas and Texas A&M. But it's situations where if you don't go and play your best, you are certainly capable of getting clipped. And this is, especially this weekend going to Arkansas, the quintessential trap game. Just like, by the way, last week for Arkansas, Liberty was that. We sat here on Friday, we did our What to Watch segment. One of my What to Watch topics was Liberty going to Arkansas. Arkansas was on the road at Auburn. Big win at Auburn. A week ahead of the LSU game. You know you got the Tigers coming in, which is a game to the people in Arkansas that means way more than it does here. And here comes little old Liberty. But Hugh Freeze had that team at 7-1. They were playing really good football. They were not going to be intimidated at all going on the road to Fayetteville. We saw Arkansas struggle earlier this year with Missouri State when Bobby Petrino came in. Tactical coaches that are really good offensive minds have given Arkansas trouble. And they got popped. So now Arkansas, after this giant letdown, is primed for a bounce back. Meanwhile, LSU, this sky-high euphoria of beating Alabama and looking at what's ahead now, and now you got to go play an 11 a.m. game in Fayetteville, in the cold, 40-degree weather, on the road. I mean, it is the quintessential trap spot. And Brian Kelly was asked today, this is number 14, Music Good. Brian Kelly was asked, is Arkansas a trap game? Here's what he said.
I mean, I guess that's what they call it. I've never bought into that because I think if it's a trap game, you have not done a very good job with your football team. For example, January, February, March, we did not train indoors. We trained outdoors. So weather's not going to be a factor. We've been outside in 50-degree, 40-degree weather. They know that, Arkansas is an SEC opponent that beat them last year. So your thoughts affect, your actions, right? That affect your physiological response. So we've been working on how we think since day one. It becomes a trap game if you're not thinking right. And we'll get our guys thinking the right way, and we'll prepare the right way. And this is about a consistency. If they want to be a consistent program, they'll think the right way about this game.
You don't think that man has covered every single base? Do you understand the biggest difference between what was and what is at LSU right now is his attention to detail? That man took the LSU job in December, spent the entire month making over his roster. Mind you, we all know 39 players in the bowl game, 15 mid-year enrollees, all the transfers. We know it. Basically went into a hole. We didn't even talk to Brian Kelly after signing day. Do you realize how atypical that is? The head coach at LSU did not do a national signing day press conference. That's how deep into the weeds he was trying to get this thing back. And in January, he was thinking about playing cold weather games on the road in November. So in January, February, they weren't training indoors. They were training outdoors because of this. That is a borderline maniacal attention to detail. But that's why you create situations so your team isn't surprised. Did you hear him say, like, thoughts control your body's physiological response? So we have to get our guys thinking the right way. And it's one thing to say it on the Monday before you go to Arkansas after beating Alabama. But we've seen it. Like, doesn't that in a sense explain? And this is why, by the way, I have little to no anxiety at all about LSU going to play at Arkansas this weekend. He's got it. Hasn't he proven enough times this year? He's got it. Like, just look at how this team has responded when they faced adversity. We've talked about it so much. They were down 14 to Florida State. They were down 13 to Mississippi State. They were down 17 on the road at Auburn. They were down 17-3 at home to Ole Miss. They were down 7-0 after 2 plays against Florida. Like, look at the adversity they faced against Alabama, the fumble call that didn't go their way, the tip pass that didn't go their way. Like, y'all, we've seen it so much. And then just not even in games. Look at situations. You get blown out at home against Tennessee. Remember, that was a 2-point spread, y'all. It was a 2-point spread. At that point, LSU had beaten Mississippi State. They had beaten Auburn. You feel like you had rinsed all the Florida State nonsense out of your mouth and you were improving as a team, and this was your chance. Tennessee coming into Baton Rouge. Didn't even matter that it was 11 a.m. People packed Tiger Stadium. 2-point spread. Let's go make a memory. You had people on this station picking LSU to win that game because the weather was nice. I love you, hon. But my point is, that game could not have gone worse. Not possible that could have gone worse. And so after you have that letdown, remember, you're playing well, you're feeling good about yourself, boom, you get pounded by an elite team. And then what did you have to do? You had to go on the road to Florida. And I picked against LSU in Gainesville. I did, because I was like, man, how do you get up off the mat? That super disappointing loss at home where you got run, and now you got to go on the road to Florida to take on that team with that athletic quarterback. You know, can you really get off the mat again? All they did was score in their first 6 possessions of the game. And that was after Florida scored on the second play. It's no longer just a veteran coach standing at a podium saying it. You've got a sample to suggest he ain't lying. They have prepared for all of this stuff. So I'm not telling you that every player today has forgotten about Alabama. But by the time they get on the practice field this week to prepare, and by the time they get on the plane on Friday to fly to Fayetteville, I just have confidence that the head coach, who is so detail-oriented, is going to have his team ready to play in that game on Saturday morning at 11 a.m. And they're going to win it, and Bama's going to beat Ole Miss, and on Saturday night, we're going to be toasting an SEC West championship and making plans officially for Atlanta. So that is probably, I think, just the biggest difference right now is you have a coach that is so detail-oriented, that has considered everything because he's seen everything over 3 decades as a head coach. The last truly big game that Brian Kelly won at Notre Dame, and I'm not trying to say that there weren't other big games, but maybe the biggest game that he won there was in 2020 in the COVID year. In 2020 in the COVID year, if you remember, number 1 Clemson went to Notre Dame Stadium. It was number 1 against number 4. And Notre Dame won that game in double overtime, 47-40. Double overtime. You would think, man, you beat number 1 Clemson. First win over a number 1 team in 30 years, whatever it was. And the next week they had to go on the road to Chestnut Hill to take on Boston College. Beat them 45-31. He's just shown an ability to do this in his career, to get his teams ready to play. And sometimes you're not as good. And look, LSU against Tennessee was not as good as Tennessee on that day. And I think you would agree with me. LSU defensively is fundamentally different today than they were in that game because of what Harold Perkins' involvement has allowed them to do. Harold Perkins played eight snaps against Tennessee. play that game again, I think you have a different result. I'm not saying LSU wins undeniably, but you have a different result. It ain't what it was. And I don't really worry about LSU going to Arkansas this weekend. Could they lose? Sure. I mean, could you fumble a couple of times because a defender makes a really good play? Could KJ Jefferson rip off a 70-yard run? I mean, sure. It could happen. But I don't think it's one of those things where LSU goes up to Fayetteville and sleepwalks this weekend. I think Brian Kelly's got too much of a track record showing he ain't going to have that letdown happen. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.